Good morning, everyone. My name is Amanda Chaya, and I welcome you to this Zoom meeting today. In today's Zoom meeting, we are going to talk about initiatives and referendums, specifically in Arizona. And the objectives that we have for today's presentation will be the following. So by the end of this presentation, we will be able to understand what an initiative and referendum are, how an initiative and referendum are created, the similarities and differences between both, and how initiatives and referendums support the idea of direct democracy in Arizona, and touch upon the pros and cons of both. First, I'd like to start off with a definition of what an initiative is. An initiative allows citizens to create laws or amendments through a ballot. A referendum are from the General Assembly that appear alongside of an initiative or a proposal on the ballot for the people to vote on. So, what are some similarities and differences between both? Well, they are the same because they both need to be voted on, and they both allow people to take part in the legislative process. However, the approach is different. The main difference is the initiative starts with the citizens, while a referendum starts with the government or General Assembly. That is the main difference between both, and it's very important to understand that. So how are initiatives created? Well, first, you need to form a political committee through the Secretary of State in Arizona's online system. You have to follow an application and have a serial number for the committee that is formed. You then have to acquire the appropriate petition through the Secretary of State's office, in which you will then register with the state of Arizona's Secretary's office, and you have to circulate it to get signatures from 15% of eligible voters. That's very important because if the people who are creating this initiative do not get the 15% signatures from electoral voters, the Secretary of State will not pass it to go onto the ballot. From there, once you have completed those steps, you must submit it to the Secretary of State by a deadline, which is always on the main Arizona Secretary of State's website. From there, they'll go over all the steps to make sure they were completed and followed, and then given a place on the ballot for people to vote on. Now, when we talk about referendums, it's pretty much the same because, again, it is a law or amendment that has been created, but instead, like I have said before, it's only created by the General Assembly. So how they're created is the General Assembly comes together. They come up with a law or an amendment that they want passed. They have to submit it to the Secretary of State as well. And then they need to have sponsors and submit a full text of exactly what they are going to be putting on the ballot and their proposal. So with that said, there's many pros and cons to both. The thing is that both are to make the Constitution better, depending on what the proposal is and if majority of the people do vote in favor for what is being proposed. Some of the cons are that with an initiative, like I said before, you do have to get 15% of electoral voters' signatures on the petitions, in favor of what you're proposing. For the referendum, it's only created by the General Assembly, so you're not too sure what the agenda is. When you look at the initiative, a lot of people in research say that it's for the people and that it's always in favor of what is going to work best for the state and what the people of the state want. So there's pros and cons to both. Moving on, initiatives and referendums do support direct democracy, especially in the state of Arizona. Like I mentioned before, initiatives and referendums have to be voted on by majority of the people. That is how it supports direct democracy. All the laws and amendments passed and voted on are based on the body of the population and not just the government, which is very, very important. Lastly, in conclusion, I hope that you were able to take away some key points about initiatives and referendums in this Zoom presentation. Again, it's important to understand that initiatives are created by the people and that referendums are created by the General Assembly. There are some overlaps and similarities, but because of how they created, it does create some differences. There are pros and cons to both, and it's important to understand the importance and the steps of each so that the people can put on the ballot what they want. I hope that you learned something from this presentation, and I thank you for tuning in.